So we are talking about trillions, quadrillions, if we sum up all of the TradFi assets compared to mere 100 billion. So we are talking about 1,000, 1K-X multiplication. And that's why we are very excited to be on the front of this movement and help with the expansion.
I want to first play this video clip because this gentleman here months ago, in this clip, it's a gentleman from a financial institution, and he talks about in detail how, DeFi is now mature enough and ready for financial institutions. And then I want you guys to take that into consideration when we're going into the red fundamentals real quick and what just happened yesterday for the first time in history. All right, so just take a second here and listen.
Think about decentralized finance, institutional grade decentralized finance. There might also be, despite the fact that it was suffering the last couple of months and years for different reasons, including regulatory reasons, just natural development of technology and getting more mature. Same thing could be for decentralized finance. The efficiency, empowerment, financial inclusion, different topics that really drive intrinsic value of that. But, it's a fact. This is only true, and that's the disclaimer, if it's done right. And I think that decentralized finance has been a lot of learning, development, and it's now the time when decentralized finance is ready for institutions to be utilized.
So this guy's talking about that he believes decentralized finance is ready for institutions to utilize it. And this is from a year ago. So this is exactly what I'm saying. The institutions still aren't here yet. We know that looking at the market cap, like $4 trillion. I mean, yeah, they're coming in. They're starting to slowly adopt the technology. And don't get me wrong, they're definitely starting to show their cards, but they ain't showing their full hand yet, if you catch my drift. $4 trillion is nothing compared to what's coming. So now fast forward a year later, in today's video breakdown, we're going to go over this huge announcement that just took place from Red. If we come up here, Redstone acquires Credora, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, network, the leading DeFi ratings provider. This changes the status quo for DeFi risk management. For the first time ever, real-time pricing plus institutional grade risk ratings under one roof. So we're going to dive into this thoroughly. I want to read this update for you guys because there's so much juice in this one article, and this is fresh from September 4th, 2025. Another reason why we're going to cover this is because in the private CYPRX community, we have called out a lot of really great projects. Like I mentioned, just to name a few off the top of my head, we called Soy, we called Arrow, like not to brag or boast, but it just shows that the research that we do is valid and it tends to materialize because we actually build conviction off of thorough research and not just speculative, nonsensical hype. Right. And so one thing that we had mentioned all the way back in May, myself and D'Angelo in particular, and a couple of other community members in this community as well, like Kevin, we were all just talking about it in general. And then I believe it was one of the researchers, so I'll just shout out to them as well, that kind of called this project out. I don't remember which one particularly it was, or whether it was D'Angelo or whoever, but it's just phenomenal that instead of waiting for price appreciation and just holding and marrying one bias in one asset, we're diversified. And I feel like that strength in our portfolio being diversified shows because we're not just hoping, right? We're actually doing research and putting our money where our mouth is at. My red portfolio personally is up substantially. I was able to accumulate over 50,000 units of it when it hit a freaking dollar earlier today. My portfolio skyrocketed up to 50 racks, right? $1, 50,000 units, that's 50 grand. I didn't take any profit. That's a long-term hold for me. And I'll just be openly admitting to that with you guys. Like I'm not sitting here saying that it's still paper numbers at the end of the day till I pull profit, but I have high conviction in this asset in the future moving forward. This is definitely a 2030 hold for me. And here you can see one of the mentions in the Discord where I told you guys, Redstone's gotten a nice little pullback, and this is when it was trading at 27 cents. Fast forward to today, it skyrocketed all the way up to briefly past $1 before spiking back down and now currently trading at around 67 to 65 cents. Okay. So going over this in detail, And again, the reason why I'm showing you guys this is not to brag or boast. If you missed out, it's just to again show you guys, that we're not here just like, I don't know, I'm here to make money. I'm not here to just hodl and hope, pray on my knees like some crypto god's going to give me returns. I'm here to do the research. So here's some of that research. Um, September 4th, 2025. The problem was before this acquisition or this acquirement of Credora Network via Redstone, the problem was that DeFi witnessed an explosive growth but lacked standardized risk measurement. Thousands of protocols with varying risk profiles, no reliable way to evaluate safety across platforms, models of traditional rating agencies aren't adjusted for crypto mechanics. The solution here is Credora was purpose-built for DeFi assessing collateral composition and stability, volatility and liquidity, governance structures, cross-chain exposure, all with crypto-native methodologies, not retrified legacy models. So why does this matter? It says here, Redstone and Credora is the first oracle ever to deliver comprehensive market data and risk intelligence together. Protocols will now be able to auto-adjust collateral ratios based on live credit scores, optimize lending parameters dynamically, and transparently present risk sentiment. The institutional impact that this is going to have is it says this brings TradFi grade risk management to DeFi. So this is literally what everybody in DeFi has been freaking waiting for, y'all. You understand? Like everybody in DeFi that's skeptical and sitting on the sidelines because it's too risky. This builds transparency into all of that and it mitigates all of that risky behavior that previously existed, right? This is freaking crazy. So the interesting part is that they're already testing this. And so it says here, real traction, leading DeFi protocols already using Credor are outperforming ones that are not. The data shows vaults with ratings grow faster than the ones without them. This acquisition scales that impact globally, and Credor has a post going over this in detail. If we continue, it says, the convergence is that we're witnessing TradFi and DeFi. TradFi assets moving on chain like BlackRock, Apollo, Hamilton Lane, secured by Redstone. DeFi is gaining institutional trust through proper risk frameworks, and Redstone is at the center of this. If we go down here, this is where I was talking about. Redstone already secures over $10 billion in TVL, but the market cap of Redstone is nowhere near that. And it's across 110 different chains with zero downtime. Looking forward, it gives a little roadmap ahead. They're talking about these different phases. Phase 1 is the immediate integration of lending vaults, and that's already begun. Phase 2 is rating API embedded in Redstone feeds. Phase 3 is full automation of risk-based parameter adjustments. And then it says the future of DeFi is risk-aware, transparent, and institutional ready. Here it gives you that link. And then what I really want to go into detail is the actual announcement from Redstone, because this is where it gets juicy. It talks about key takeaways and in detail why this matters and what this means for DeFi moving forward. Okay. And that is where this all isn't super important because again, prior to the September 4th, none of this technically speaking existed. I mean, it existed, but it wasn't announced and really fully like ready to go. Here it is, the announcement September 4th. So that means every day after September 4th, people can't say that this stuff doesn't exist. It now exists. This is crazy work here. And this is exactly what this space, particularly DeFi, needs to evolve to be infrastructural grade ready for institutions. Redstone has acquired Credora, a leading DeFi native rating platform. This creates the first oracle that delivers real-time price and risk ratings, giving protocols and users the tools to build safer and more transparent markets, a big step toward building a unified financial infrastructure. For most of its history, decentralized finance has lived apart from traditional finance. DeFi is open, fast, programmable, and experimental. TradFi is regulated, slow, opaque, institutional, and risk-aware. And now those two worlds are converging. With the acquisition of Credora, we are building the first oracle that unites prices, risk ratings, and collateral intelligence under one roof. This is a major step forward, creating the unified infrastructure that finance needs to scale. The key takeaways of this is that price and risk are in one place. With Credora, Redstone becomes the first oracle to combine real-time prices with standardized risk ratings, fixing DeFi's biggest gap. Thousands of protocols exist, but up until now, There was no consistent way to measure or compare their risks. So again, this is why this is huge to me, in my personal opinion, because now with this partnership with Credora, or excuse me, this Redstone acquiring Credora, it's now happening for the first time ever. So that means we operated in a market without this. What does a market over the next 5 years with this look like? And Redstone's at the front of that. That's the way that I think, right?
Let's call it for simplistic words. You have $1 million and you put it into ACRET. You deposit to Securitize. That is being transferred to S-ACRET Vault so that you make from ACRET S-ACRET, which is this token that is possible to be used across DeFi and liquidated. And this S-ACRET is put as collateral. In example, on Drift or Morpho or Camino, all of these platforms allow for that strategy right now. So you've got $1 million of S-ACRET deposited to Drift. And what's happening right now is you can borrow USDC against that collateral. For simplicity, let's call it that you have a 70% liquidation threshold. So you would borrow only 50% of what you put as collateral so that you don't hit this liquidation threshold easily. So if you borrow 50%, that would give you 500,000 USDC. And with this 500,000 USDC, you can go again to Securitize, deposit that into ACRET, go again to S-ACRET and loop again, right? In that regard, you create an airdrop, the first ever in history, and I want to emphasize that Redstone allows for that and Redstone enables that. It's the first time in the history where you have a tokenized private credit fund being able to be leveraged in DeFi with this infrastructure. And this is a huge breakthrough because it's just the top of the iceberg as we go into the broader adoption.
Already trusted by leaders, Credora ratings are used by protocols like Morpho, providing real adoption and proving real market value. Confidence for users and institutions, ratings give retail investors clarity on risk-adjusted returns and provide institutions with reliable framework for allocation. What? Y'all, come on now. This is crazy. A growth advantage for protocols, data shows that rated vaults grow faster and attract more liquidity than underrated ones. Every modern financial application is built on two universal primitives: price data, and risk data. So those two primitives, right? That's what financial applications are built on. Well, legacy oracles solved the first challenge, bringing price feeds on chain. Redstone improved that model, making feeds faster, cheaper, and more customizable, while securing over $10 billion in TVL across 110 different chains with zero mispricing events. With Credora, we now extend this foundation to cover risk transparency, offering DeFi the trusted framework that it has been missing. In traditional markets, institutions rely on the S&P or Moody's to evaluate risk. DeFi has lacked an equivalent. Well, Credora by Redstone changes that, again, for the first time in history, making it possible for protocols and users to understand, compare, and price risk with the same confidence that they already apply to price data. As Marcin, the co-founder of Redstone, explains, hopefully I'm saying his name correctly, I'm excited about this acquisition because Credora is already leading DeFi ratings provider, widely used by Morpho, and is poised to expand across the broader lending ecosystem. And I showed you guys earlier today, the DTCC representative Dan Donnie said that lending, posting digital assets and crypto as collateral is going to be one of the biggest use cases, $20 trillion per day in traditional markets right now. And here you can see that this is set to expand across the broader lending ecosystem.
But tokens themselves really aren't game changers. They're just another database, a database with benefits to be sure, but just another database in the end. It's actually what you can do with tokens that makes the big difference. And the foundational transaction in finance is collateral. So most people think liquidity really comes from trading activity, that's what makes a difference, my ability to convert dollars to shares of Tesla. Yeah, that's important. But by far, that's a drop in the bucket compared to transactions in liquidity that have to do with borrowing and lending. So there are transactions. Repurchase agreements are the way that banks get liquidity. So they take assets, high quality assets like treasuries, and when they need cash, they post them as collateral and borrow cash from one another in a model called repurchase agreements or repos. That transaction is the most dominant transaction of any globally on a daily basis. I forget the number, over $20 trillion a day. I think it's even more than that. But anyway, roughly that amount is in that transaction. Well, it turns out blockchain is the perfect technology. Perfect. It's like tailor-made. It's the killer app for blockchain to do collateral management. Why? Because you can encode the locking rules into smart contracts. Now,
ratings are a natural extension of oracles. Oracles gather and deliver data. Ratings transform that data into actionable intelligence. As DeFi yield strategies grow more complex with varying durations of liquidity profiles and risk, users need a way to navigate opportunities beyond just headline APYs. Ratings provide that clarity. With institutional adoption of on-chain assets accelerating from stablecoins and bonds and private credit, reinsurance and cash and carry trades and strategies, risk-aware ratings will become a universal necessity. So that means everybody's going to pretty much need this. And guess what? Who's providing it? Redstone, right? So you guys kind of see now why I'm so bullish on this. It's not just like, oh, some speculative hype. There's actually reason to this. It's not just, oh, I think the banks are going to use Redstone. No, it's like, hey, they're going to have to use this technology if they want to onboard, collectively speaking, risk mitigated into DeFi, right? We've always believed that risk transparency is the cornerstone of sustainable DeFi, said Darsha Vaidya, founder of Credora. Joining forces with Redstone allows us to scale this mission globally and is a natural fit for us to be able to build a more robust and usable DeFi for institutions and individuals alike. So there's that. I think that it's crazy that it goes on to talk about the S&P and Moody's and how, that's what financial institutions utilize now to assess risk in the markets. And it's pretty much talking about how this is that same exact scenario, except in DeFi, right? Well, just go look at what the S&P and Moody's do and how literally the Moody's rating can move the markets, can move the freaking FX markets, like it did when the AA rating dropped, like what was at the beginning of this year, and it tanked the United States dollar. Come on now, y'all. We're not sleeping on this opportunity. At least I know I'm not. So that was a really cool update just to see now looking back in history in our group that we had notified to the community, hey, look, we got all these oracles, but which one does things collectively speaking better? It's not about right now who has the most adoption, because right now we're still in the early days. So for us to think, just like back in the days when there were all these internet companies, some of them in the first 20 years thrived, but now they're not here. Like, look at MySpace. MySpace was popping. I know you had a MySpace back then. Everybody on this call probably had MySpace or knows exactly what I'm talking about. But now look, where's MySpace at, right? It's the same thing now. Things might be popping the first 5 years, and it might look like, oh, it's the crazy one, it's the chosen one. But in reality, don't get fish hooked into believing that that's to be the case, because I personally believe that, not to sound cliche, but there's more than meets the eye. And I think that the ones that are really going to last are the ones that are actually solving problems for the first time ever. Not saying that other oracles, there's definitely going to need to be multiple oracles in the future as well. Just like there's going to need to be multiple interoperability layers. There's going to need to be multiple different chains, multiple different protocols, multiple different a lot of shit. So don't just think that because you have different interoperable bridging solutions or different oracles or different, I don't know, what's another niche category in crypto? Like, you name it, there's not just going to be one crypto or one blockchain in each of the niches that rule. It's going to be all the money flowing through these protocols and these chains, and the ones that are established now with financial institutions and actually test running these things and building out infrastructure are going to be the ones that survive. And Red, for sure, is one of those players. So
I think we are still super early. Like, we've just saw the first interaction between the RWA assets and DeFi last month with S assets. So basically, it's like I would say, just the beginning of the flow, the real capital. And if you look at the value of the real economy, if you look at the value of all of the assets, equity of the traditional finance, that totally dwarfs the total value locked in DeFi. So we are talking about trillions, quadrillions. If we sum up all of the TradFi assets compared to mere 100 billion. So we are talking about 1,000x multiplication. And that's why we are very excited to be on the front of this movement and